Good morning, guys. You're gonna be doing Cartesian plane. I'm just gonna read you the whole thing because I'm definitely sure that some of you forgot what is happening here. Okay, you are given that 13 sine theta minus 12 is equals to 0, and you were told that theta lies between 0 degrees and 90 degrees, which means theta lies in the first quadrant. So your angle theta must be between 90 and 0 degrees. Use suitable diagram to determine sec. Okay, you need to remember that sec is the reciprocal of cos, and then you have to remember it will be hypotenuse divided by adjacent, and sine will be opposite all over hypotenuse, tan will be opposite all over adjacent, and then you've got sine squared theta plus cos squared theta, and the last one will be sine theta divided by cos theta. Okay, before you can do anything here, you will have to draw a diagram. This is what you're given. What I'm going to do, guys, take that 13 sine theta. I'm going to take this 13 sine minus 12 equals to 0, and I am going to make sine theta the subject of the formula. So I'm just going to make this the subject of the formula, meaning that 12 will have to be transposed to the right hand side, and immediately jumps the equal sign. It will be plus 12. So this side I'll be left with 13 sine theta is equals to 12, and for me to get rid of this 13, I'll have to divide both sides by 13. Hence I've got sine theta is equal to 12 divided by 13. Hence sine theta is equal to 12 divided by 13. Immediately when you're done with this, please make sure you draw your your diagram. Okay, you'll realize that in my diagram, guys, I'm going to draw my triangle, my right angle triangle in the first quadrant, and make sure that, guys, the vertical line is drawn against your x-axis. Okay, so we've got that as theta. So basically this angle in between will just be theta, but make sure that the vertical line is drawn against the x-axis. You will never draw it against the y-axis. You must always draw it against the x-axis. All right, the reason why I'm drawing my diagram in the first quadrant is because, guys, you need to understand here we have 0 degrees. Over there on top we've got y, which is 90 degrees. When I come to the side, I'll have 180, and when I go to the bottom, I'll have 270, and then I'm gonna have 360, and then it rotates just like that. So basically they've just told me that my angle is between 0 degrees and 90 degrees. So that is where my angle lies. My angle lies between 90 degrees and 0 degrees. Okay, that is why I had to draw my diagram in the first quadrant. But in this quadrant, guys, you need to understand, in this triangle I'm simply given theta. All right, but they told me what is opposite theta. They told me the opposite theta I'm gonna have 12. And how did I get 12? It's because I know for sine that will be opposite and 13 will be hypotenuse. Guys, I just need to emphasize this. Your hypotenuse will never be negative. All right, your hypotenuse will never be negative. Okay, I repeat, hypotenuse will never be negative. So be careful when you use your Pythagoras theorem and you're asked to solve for the hypotenuse. Make sure that it always takes the positive sign. It will never be negative. All right, now opposite theta, guys, the side opposite theta obviously is given to me that it is equals to 12. Okay, so basically opposite theta I'm going to have 12, and hypotenuse is simply this side here, which is drawn from the center. Right, this is the longest side, which is your hypotenuse, and your hypotenuse is always opposite 90 degrees. Remember, the vertical line that you draw will always be perpendicular to the x-axis, and that vertical line, you always draw it against the x-axis. All right, now you will realize that we have hypotenuse, which is 13. The only thing that is missing will be your adjacent. I have told you that your adjacent is 5, and I'm going to show you step by step as to how I got that 5. Okay, Firstly, I know my hypotenuse is equals to 13, which is what is given. And my opposite will be 12. I'm going to use the theorem of Pythagoras for me to solve for my adjacent. So I will have, where there's y I substituted 12, where there's r I substituted 13, because my hypotenuse is 13. I'm going to end up having 13 squared minus 12 squared. 13 squared is 169 and 12 squared is 144. So I'll have 169 minus 144, and 169 minus 144 will give me 25. If I find the square root, please remember the square root carries plus or minus. If I find the square root, I will simply get an x value which is equals to 5, meaning that my adjacent will just be equal to 5. Because our diagram is in the first quadrant, please remember this, guys. In the first quadrant, both x and y will be positive. All right, this is the first quadrant. In the first quadrant, both x and y will be positive. In the second quadrant, that is the second quadrant, x is negative, but y is positive. In the third quadrant, both x and y are negative. If your diagram lies in the third quadrant, you must just remember that the x value must be negative and the y value must be negative. But you need to remember, guys, your hypotenuse will always be positive. We call that the fourth quadrant. In the fourth quadrant, x will be positive and y will be negative. As I go through this, guys, make sure you write the notes and you don't forget what I've just told you right now. Okay, now I can now answer my question since I have all the three sides of the right angle triangle. I know that sec will be your hypotenuse over your adjacent, because a sec, it is the reciprocal of course, right? And sine, we've got opposite all over hypotenuse. Please remember, guys, I'm taking all of these from this diagram over here, okay? For sine, it will be opposite all over hypotenuse, and for sec, obviously, it was adjacent over, it was hypotenuse over adjacent, right? I've also been asked to calculate 10. 10 will be opposite all over hypotenuse. My opposite was 12, and my hypotenuse will be 5. And I've got sine squared theta plus cos squared theta. Where there's sine squared theta, I'm going to substitute 12 over 13. Where there's cos, I'm going to substitute 5 over 13, and I'm going to square both. I'm going to have 144 plus 25 over, both will be over 169. Now, since the denominator is the same, you represent them as a single denominator. You just add the numerators. 144 plus 25 will give you 169, which is equals to 1. Okay, now if I have sine theta divided by cos theta, sine is 12 over 13, cos is 5 over 13. So it's a division on top of division. So I'm going to change this sign here to the division sign. So I still have 12 over 13, which is that 12 over 13. I still have divided by, it is divided by 5 over 13. There is 5 over 13. I'm going to change the sign to multiplication. You know what will happen when I change it to multiplication? That will go to the numerator and this will go to the denominator. Hence, we have that. Now you realize that here 13 cancels with 13, so you are left with 12 over 5, and this is the same as 10 theta. So basically sine theta all over cos theta is the same as finding tangent of theta. Okay, now let us look at this example here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm simply repeating the same thing again, guys. I'm going to take my given equation and I'm going to cos theta the subject of the formula, meaning that I'm going to take 2 to that side. When I transpose 2 to that side, it will be positive, and then I'm going to divide by 5. So on the right hand side, I'll have 2 over 5. Please remember the ratio we're dealing with here is simply cos. First things first, draw the diagram which is in the first quadrant. Why do I draw it in the first quadrant? It's because I've been told that theta lies between 0 degrees and 90 degrees. Now I am given the hypotenuse with 5, which is 5, and I was given the adjacent, which is 2. The only thing I'm left with is the hypotenuse, is the opposite, okay? A side opposite theta. That is what I'm missing, which is why I will simply say x squared plus y squared is equals to r squared, and obviously y squared will be equal to r squared minus x squared. Your r is 5 and your x is 2. 5 squared minus 4, which is 2 squared, which is 25 minus 4, that will give you 9. So your y value will be the square root of 21. Please note that it should be the square root plus or minus the square root of 21, but because all my diagram is in the first quadrant, both x and y will be positive. That's why I only took the positive y value, which is square root of 21. Once I have the y value, I can start answering my questions. I will start with sec theta. Alright, sec, as I've said, will be your hypotenuse over your adjacent, which is 5 over 2. The next one will be sine, which is opposite all over hypotenuse. It will be square root of 21 over 5, and it will be tangent will be opposite all over adjacent, which is square root of 21 over 2, right? And then we're going to have 1 minus sine squared theta, where the sine I'm going to substitute that opposite all over hypotenuse, which is the square root of 21 over 5, and when I square the square root of 21, I'm going to get 21. 5 squared will give me 5. Okay, simplify this, it'll simply give you 25 over 25. Obviously I multiply this one by 25 over 25, and then I have minus 21 over 25. Now represented as a single denominator, you will have 25 minus 21, it will be 4 over 25, and this will be your final answer. All right, the last one will be sine theta over cos theta and sine theta over cos theta. Please try and do it. It'll give you the same answer as square root of 21 over 2. I'm just going to leave that to you guys, okay? Let's move to this one over here where we have 12 tan theta is equals to 25, and we'll simply divide both sides by 12 and it'll give me my tangent. But I was told as well that theta lies in the first quadrant because theta is between 0 degrees and 90 degrees, okay? So I do have 10. 10 is 5 over 12, where 5 is the opposite and 12 is the adjacent. The only thing I'm missing here is the hypotenuse, right? So basically for me to find the hypotenuse, I'm just going to use the theorem of Pythagoras. 12 squared is 144, 5 squared is 25, 144 plus 25 is 169. Find the square root of 169. It should be plus or minus 13, but I'm just going to take 13 because I know my hypotenuse will always be positive. All right, a line which it's simply your radius, basically a line drawn from the center to the circumference will always be positive. That's why your hypotenuse in this case will always be positive. All right, now once I've got r, I can simply find my sec theta, which is my adjacent, my hypotenuse over my adjacent, and sine will be opposite all over hypotenuse, which is 5 over 13, and 10 will be 5 over 12, which was simply given to you. In this case, I'm simply where the sine, I will simply substitute 5 over 13. Where there's cos, I will substitute 12 over 13. You just square them. 5 squared and it'll give you 25. 13 squared is 160. 12 squared is 144, 13 squared is 169. Simplify this, it'll give you 169 over 169. I'm just going to leave, well, I didn't leave it for you in this case. I did it for you. Now for sine, as I've said, it's 5 all over 13, which is your opposite all over your hypotenuse. It is divided by, so this line represents division. It is divided by cos. Cos will be 12 over 13, which is your adjacent all over your hypotenuse, right? I'm going to change this division sign to multiplication, and you know what will happen. 13 will go to the numerator, 12 will go to the denominator. Now from here, we'll be left with 5 over 12 as the answer, which is the same as tan theta, which is 5 over 12. Okay, now let's move on, guys. There's another one. I want you guys to do this as a practice classwork. I will leave to you guys. It's pretty much the same as what we have done. Now, here is another one, which is an activity where you are given that sine theta is equals to 12 over 13, and you are given the diagram below. Complete the diagram. Please note that you don't have the x value, but you were given the y value, which is 12. Please note that if your diagram doesn't lie in the first quadrant, it will be drawn for you. In this case, it is drawn for you in the second quadrant, and I will emphasize the signs. Okay, please, I did actually emphasize it in the previous video where I told you that in the second quadrant, x will be positive, but y will be, x will be negative, but y will be positive. Okay, in this case, we do have our y value, which is 12, which is positive, which is missing our x value. But however, we are given that sine theta is equals to 12 over 13. So basically, they gave us the opposite and the hypotenuse. Okay, I'm going to draw it quickly in the next slide. Please write those. I did mention them in the previous video. Draw a line against the x-axis, and that line must be perpendicular to the x-axis. Now from here you realize the only thing that is missing is the adjacent. Obviously inside a triangle you will have theta. So that's what we have, guys. I did explain this. 12 is the opposite and 13 is your hypotenuse. You have to use the theorem of Pythagoras for you to solve for x. Please note that x will be plus or minus the square root of 25. I don't think I need to explain that, guys. I am sure that you are following through to what I did there. Okay? I simply squared that. It's 169. This 12, when it jumps the equal sign, it's actually 144. When it jumps the equal sign, it will be negative. 169 minus 144, it will give you 25. And for you to solve for x, you'll have to square root both sides. And when you square root both sides, you will have plus or minus on the right hand side. Okay, so if I square root both sides here, I will have plus or minus the square root of 25. But my x value here will simply be negative because it is in the second quadrant, guys. Please write these rules that I've written in red because they are very, very important. Okay. Once I've found my x value, guys, you must just celebrate because all you have to do is just to substitute. You just have to remember your ratios. Sine is opposite all over hypotenuse, cos is adjacent all over hypotenuse, but your adjacent, which is x, it was minus 5. That's why I have minus 5 over 12. But when I square this, guys, it'll give me a positive answer. That's why I have 25 over 169, which is simply 169 over 169, which is 1. So you can assume that you can actually conclude that whenever you have sine squared of something plus cos squared of something, your answer will always be positive. Okay. Guys, I've only done the last one. Please do cot as well as 13 sine theta. Alright, for this one, guys, I'm just going to do the whole thing to make you complete, to help you complete the previous activity where you needed to find cot theta as well as 13 sine theta minus 13 cos theta. Okay, for you to be able to answer that, please go through this one. I'll go through this one in detail. Okay, I am given that cos theta is equals to minus 4 divided by 5, and this is in the second quadrant, so x is positive. It's actually negative in the second quadrant, but y is positive. Now I am given that negative 4 is actually my adjacent, you should know that, and 5 will simply be your opposite. Now you are left with one thing, and the only thing you're left with is simply your hypotenuse. I mean, not your hypotenuse, it's simply your opposite. All right, now for you to solve for your opposite, this is what you're going to use. You're going to use the theorem of Pythagoras. Please note that, guys, where there is hypotenuse, I substituted 5 because I am given the hypotenuse, which is 5, and where there's adjacent, I substituted -4. When you substitute it, make sure you put it in brackets. -4 squared will give you positive 16. 5 squared will give you 25. When you transpose 16 to the other side, it will be negative, and you're going to have 25 minus 16, which is 9. Square root both sides, and y will be plus or minus 13. Okay, and I'm going to take only a positive answer because I am given. I've just emphasized it here. There. Okay, here it is. In the quadrant, look at that coordinate, it changes to green. I'm simply emphasizing that y in the second quadrant is positive. Please remember the rules that I did in the previous slide. Hence, guys, instead of taking minus, I'm going to say y is equals to 3. Hence, I have that positive y as my value instead of -3. Okay, once you've done that, guys, you can now answering questions. 10 is opposite of hypotenuse, so I'm going to have 3 over 5, and I have 10 sine theta minus 5 cos theta. In this case, I will simply substitute 3 over 5 where there's sine, and I will substitute negative 4 over 5 where there is cos, and this is what it will give me. Okay, so basically where there's sine, I substituted 3 over 5, where there's cos, I substituted -4 over 5. Okay, now simplifying this, you'll realize that 5 goes into 10 twice, 2 times 3. That's why I'm left with 2 times 3 over there. 5 goes into 5 once, and I'm left with that 4 over there. Okay. So that's what I'm going to have. 2 times 3 minus -4, and that will give me 6 plus 4. 6 plus 4 will simply give me 10. Okay, and that's how you will solve for it. Number 3, where the sine, guys, sine squared, I'm just going to substitute 3 over 5, and that's what I'm going to have, but you're going to have to square that, and I changed, guys. Please note that this 2 will simply be divided by 1, so I'm going to have 2 over 1 times 9 over 25. 2 times 9 is 18, and I will change this. Obviously, I'm going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 25, and I will have 25 over 25, and it will end up giving me that. Okay, I hope you do remember how to simplify fractions. We did it earlier on, guys. 25 minus 18 will give you 7, and hence my solution will be 7 over 25. Please do this as a classwork, and this will be a complex one. Please also do this as a classwork.